Time for another edition of Saturday with Seniors, brought to you by FCCB. FCCB's local branches in Wellsboro, Mansfield, and Blossburg, proud sponsors of Saturday with Seniors here on KC101. And our guest today, Roger Chilson, 84 years old, and joining him in his office in his house. Hello, Roger.
Hello, Kevin.
Good to see you. I've known you for 27 years.
Right.
I remember when we moved to KC101's tower 25 years ago. You came up to our tower because we had to get zoning approval, and that's one of the first spots I met you.
Yes. So I was in your life originally.
Wait, but then the Covington Community Center, I used to work with you on the bingo ads that you did occasionally.
Right.
I know you helped out there, and it seemed like you're always involved with everything in the community. So
I wasn't involved much with the bingo. That was before my time.
Well, the community center, I think I remember talking to you about the community
center. I've been involved with too long.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about your life and about your earlier life and even places like Covington High School. Yes, Covington had a high school, and I bet you half the people don't even realize that.
Oh, yeah. I started there in first grade at one end towards Bloss.
Yeah.
And to the other end, 1955, I graduated out of there, top of the class of 13 kids.
Wow. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit, but let's do things a little more chronological and go back to 84 years ago. Where were you born?
I was born on Canoe Camp Creek Road.
Right, the same road as your office, down
the road from where I do. Pete Wilcox owned the farm, and I was born there. I had one sister, Stella Sargent, who was a year older than I was, and my dad wanted to name me Jake, nickname for Jake, and my sister come out with Jack. So I've been Jack for the rest of my life for close people of the family. Otherwise, people don't remember me as
Jack
as Jack,
as your birth certificate says. So, what? How long had your parents lived in that house when you moved into the farm? Did they live there for a while? Was this an old family place?
They moved there when I was about 5 years old. Paid $1,000 for 22 acres.
$1,000 for 22 acres. You pay that in taxes now for 22 acres.
That's for sure.
What type of work did your parents do?
My mother took care of 13 kids.
Well, that's a handful. We'll get to that too in a little bit.
And my dad helped press hay. You ever heard of Chet Case, the Case people with the cider mill?
Yes, Case's cider mill.
It used to be down in Mansfield. Well, okay, my dad worked for him pressing hay out of the barns and taking it down to behind the church there in Canoe Camp to send that hay into New York City for the horses.
I didn't know they actually compressed hay to make the bales smaller. That was something that...
Well, no, you've seen some of the big ones now.
Yeah.
Well, they were about like that. It was what they call a stationary baler. They'd pull it up to the farm, and then they'd pull it out of the mow and press it and use wire to tie it.
Very interesting. So you were born second child. You had a sister born before you. Were you born right in the house, or did you go to the hospital?
None of us went to the hospital.
Now you have what, 13 brothers and sisters, 14 of you total, and none of you...
No, 13 with me.
With you, okay. And none of you went to the hospital? None of you were born in a hospital?
No, nobody did. You all were born. Doc Neal, you know where the historical place is?
Yes, in Mansfield.
Doc Neal was out of there, and he would come out to the house.
And deliver a baby. That was all intentional. Okay, usually you hear the stories, it was like, well, we couldn't get there, there was a snowstorm, that was...
He came out there to the house.
To help to deliver the baby.
Deliver the baby.
Yeah. Wow.
And then the doctor after that was Doc Sanford.
That helped with the rest of your family to be...
Right, the last ones.
The last ones to be delivered.
Yeah.
Wow. So your mom must have been quite a trooper to, you said 13 kids? Quite a ringleader.
Yeah, she was one of 5. She had 4 sisters and 1 brother.
So tell me about your earliest memories there when you were younger. What were some of the things that you'd like to do to entertain when you were a kid, back in those days?
My uncle gave me a bicycle when I could get big enough to ride, a used one, and that was the enjoyment. You had to mow the lawn, but the lawn was mowed with a push mower.
Not an electric gas mower. I mean, this
no,
is...
Well, the real types.
That you had to sharpen every once in a while. That was a workout.
Oh, geez, yes. For young kids, it was.
Was there electricity on Canoe Camp Creek Road? I'm guessing there probably was at the time when you were a kid.
Oh, yes, there was electricity, and the telephone system was one of the older ones where everybody had a ring.
A certain number of rings.
Right, ours was 3 shorts. And then you would hear that if it was 2 longs, well, then you would know that was so-and-so's. And then the people would pick up the phone and listen in.
I always heard nothing was private on the phones back then.
They would call it rubbering.
That was the term, huh?
Yep.
So that's how everybody got their gossip before the internet, was just eavesdropping on the phone.
That was their Facebook or whatever compared to today.
Wow, very interesting. So when you made a phone call back then, did you have to talk to an operator, or were you able to dial, was that a dial direct days?
No. There was a certain ring that you did for operators,
mm-hmm.
and the operator would take and move it from that line.
To patch you over to the next line.
Yeah, right there in Mansfield.
Mm-hmm. A lot of jobs that don't exist anymore.
Oh, geez, yes.
I'm guessing you probably had the Iceman come to your house too, which is another job that doesn't exist. Or did you go with electric right from the beginning?
Down when I was born, there's a big barn, and right across the road from it, there was an ice house. They cut ice out of the river down Canoe Camp and put it in there and cover it with sawdust to have the ice for longer in the season.
And hand-delivered it around. So when you were a kid, the younger days in Canoe Camp Creek Road, was it a paved road then? And how were the
No. Hell, it never got paved until I must have been at least 14, 15 years old when they finally got around, because before that it was definitely mud.
And how often did a car go by then? I mean, not as much as today, I assume.
There wasn't very many cars to begin with. My dad had an old model T4 it was.
Wow.
And he'd painted a ladder like on each side of the windows so you could get in. There was no traffic on the roads.
Nothing at all then,
No.
Huh? So where did you go to do your shopping and stuff? How often did you go to town? Did you go to Mansfield or Covington or both? What was your town?
Basically, it was Mansfield. We used to sit in the car because we never was able to get out and go in because the A&P was right there in the middle of town. Mm-hmm. And we would sit there and count cars going either north or south to see who could get up to the highest number. And that was when I was real young.
Sure. What do you remember in Mansfield as a kid in town? Was there any places that you enjoyed going? Did you go to the movies ever? Restaurant? Anything that comes back to memory?
We didn't even know what a restaurant was. When we went to the movies, the movie was right there in Mansfield where the
Borough Building on Route 6.
It's right on 15, right there where the motel is.
On Main Street, South Main Street.
Yep. Right.
The old Twain Theater.
Yep, sure was.
Several people I've talked to that grew up in your generation said the same thing. They didn't go out to eat very often. They didn't.
No.
Money in general was a lot different than it is now as far as people spending it.
They would probably work for $5 a day. Because I remember when I was working on the farms around here, I started there when I was probably 13, 14 years old, milking cows. And you got $5 a day and your dinner.
And you milk cows, was this by hand or was this automated?
No, ones I was working for was up on Pitts Road. Mm-hmm. That we had 30 cows, and there was another one on over here had 36, I think it was. But that was all with milkers.
Yep.
At home, we had a couple cows, and those got milked by hand.
So you had 13, right, children in your family?
Right.
Did everybody get along? How did that all work?
Oh, yeah. Yep. No problem.
Did you have your own baseball team or anything?
If you want to play games or that, you always had plenty of people to play with.
So tell me about Covington School. You said you started there in first grade. This is where the Covington Community Center is now, for those that aren't aware. And what was school like?
Okay, the first one was Mrs. Zimmer. Stricter than hell, but every kid loved her.
Yeah. Well, then she earned respect. That's great.
Right. And she got us started in the right way. And then we went from first grade and second and third and fourth. No, I got my numbers wrong. Some numbers.
First and second, third and fourth, fifth and sixth.
So there was just 3 or 4 rooms right there close by. And
so one teacher taught 2 grades at the same room.
Yep.
Which was pretty common back then.
Yep. We had 13 in my class, and the class behind it.
You had 13 in your class. You just kind of brushed right through that like it's no big deal. You went 12, so you had more in you had the same number in your family as your class. That seemed to be your number.
Yeah, well, the class right behind us had 13 as well.
Uh-huh.
We all got a good education, at least I guess so. I went on from the 5th grade, 6th grade, then up to 7th and 8th, then 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. One fellow told me, I said, I didn't know I was any smarter than anybody else. Old Gene Fessler says, maybe you didn't, but all of us boys knew dang well you were.
So you're a graduate of Covington High School, still working. Are there any other graduates from your class, do you know, that are still out and working?
Well, they're not working, but there's Norm Conley.
I'm seeing a picture right now that we'll be able to see if you see this on our YouTube channel.
And Mike Bauer, myself, and I think possibly Leon Munson.
You've got quite a memory there, just looking through these pictures of people from... I'm seeing a black and white picture from probably the 50s here.
Yeah, that probably would have been just about in 55 when we graduated. Because here's Whitey Wilson, you knew him.
Yeah, yep, Wilson Dodge.
He was in our grade.
Sure.
He used to brag about he was in the top 10 of his class.
There you go, in the 80th percentile. Wow, so Covington High School, was there sports teams with a school that small?
Oh, they had the best basketball teams in the area. They beat them all.
What was the team mascot, or did the team have a name?
Not that I know.
No, just Covington, not the Covington Hornets, obviously, because but okay.
I worked instead of
So you were the
sports.
one or two that didn't play sports then, I guess.
Not much. I wasn't that good at it.
Yeah.
And I had to work so that I could have money enough, because I had a car when I was 16.
Let's talk about that car. What was that first car you got when you were 16?
1941 Chevy Coupe.
Can you remember what you paid for that beast of a car?
No, because I borrowed money from my two brothers, and my uncle found it for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know but what. He made certain I had the car.
Yeah. You want to make sure you had a good car, and with gas was probably what at the time, 19 cents a gallon?
23 cents.
I wasn't too far off by 4 pennies. 23 cents for gas. You had your first car, and you must have been one of the youngest people to have a car back then. That was pretty unusual.
Yeah, most of them didn't.
I mean, most families had one car then if they were lucky. Nope, two-car family was royalty.
I had a better car than my dad did. Many times he'd come to me and ask me if he could borrow my car. And I always let him have it, of course.
Sure. Did you have a 57 Chevy, or is that just what's on my list here as well?
See
that car right there in the picture, you turn around, yeah.
That turquoise, I bought that in 1958. Had 12,000 miles on it, and I think we paid $2,000 for it.
And do you still have it? Just the memories.
I wish. No, I swapped it in on an old 58 Oldsmobile station wagon.
Why a station wagon?
Because I had 3 kids by then.
Oh, okay. So how many kids do you have?
3.
Okay, so you had all 3 of your kids, and at that time, the station wagons, there was no seatbelts. You just threw them in the back wherever, piling kids, put them across the bench.
Yeah, 1 boy and 2 girls.
Kathy Peoples is here. As a lot of people know, your daughter here.
That's my youngest one.
And you have 5 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren is also what I'm seeing here.
So the youngest one was just born here about 3 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Yes.
So let's talk about the Air Force. So you did everything young in your life. Your first car, and then at 17 years old, you went into the Air Force in 1955.
Right. My buddy Donnie LaPointe says, let's join the Air Force.
And you're like, what the heck? Why not?
So I said, sure. I went home.
Did they even have airplanes then?
What?
I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. But
well, okay, so I went.
Lindbergh had only flown across the ocean 17 years before this.
So we went to Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area for induction, and he had a heart murmur, so they didn't pass him. And they sent me right on up to Sampson Air Force Base up in Watkins Glen.
On the north end of Seneca Lake. It's a big nature area now.
And I was in there 11 weeks, and now they have about 3-4 weeks, from what I understand, for basic training. And what I did was I went from there to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, an Army base for training for construction equipment mechanic. You learn to change oil. and from there I went to Las Vegas, Nevada. When I got to assignment, they were saying, Chilson, you're going to Las Vegas, Nevada. And I said to everybody, where the hell is that?
Las Vegas wasn't what it was today, I don't think, or yet.
No,
it was just a seed of what it was going to be.
Right. Fremont Street was there, and the Strip.
Yep.
And then that was about it.
They put you on the world tour.
Yes.
And then I'm looking at your list. It continues down to Alaska and then Plattsburgh, New York. And then you end up in North Africa for a couple of years.
Right. City Semaine, Morocco.
Holy cow. And then over to Ohio.
Yep.
And then you're at a place, Goose Bay, Labrador. Now, I've been to Labrador, not to Goose Bay, but I've been north of there in Labrador. And that's pretty remote country out there.
It sure is. I was there 15 months.
You probably saw some icebergs and puffin birds and almost penguins, but not quite.
It was cold, cold, cold. And to go from one barracks to another, they had tunnels underground because it was cold.
Yeah, pretty far north up there, way north of everything that we think of here. And then you were in Guam for a while and...
Yep, 2 years.
Alabama, the Vietnam War. Were you active duty in Vietnam?
Sure was. 7 months. I was there as advisor to the Vietnamese on Tan Son Nhut, to the Vietnamese vehicle maintenance shop.
Wow. This list is just unbelievable. Then you ended up going to Fort Worth Beach, Florida.
Fort Walton Beach.
I'm sorry. Okay, I read it wrong. Actually, Kathy typed it wrong. I'm going to blame her, throw her under the bus, and she'll take the blame.
Fort Walton Beach. Right?
Was that a vacation after the Vietnam War?
Oh, Jesus, yes, because they was overloaded with people by then coming back from the war, and they hadn't kicked them out yet. So the duty there was beaches. In the spring, they had a fishing derby for a month. So they weren't using, and not being very active.
Well, you deserved it after spending time in Vietnam. Then you went to Syracuse to Hancock Field, and finally it looks like you retired in 1975 from the Air Force.
Yep.
Holy cow.
20 years.
Well, thank you for your service. That's the pretty impressive list there. And then WACC, that's Williamsport Area Community College, right?
Correct.
I've heard people call it WAC.
It sure was. Yep, I went there for 2 years, got an associate degree in accounting, and then went over to Lycoming College and got a full 4-year degree in accounting. Worked out of the back of my truck doing anything. Had a lot of work or skill sets. And then I got in with Tri-County Rural Electric. I didn't even realize there was such a place. But I lucked into that, too, because the fellow that was running the financial end of it was from Virginia. He'd been here 3 years, and he hated the winters. So he went back to Virginia the year after I got graduated. So the lady that ran the job service was a close friend of mine. She had my resume. She submitted that. It was 17 people put in for that job. They got it down to 6. Got it down to 2.
Yep.
And I was here. The other guy was from Towanda. And did you ever know the old man, Frank Higgins? You possibly know his son. He was...
Sandy Higgins?
Yeah, he was... Well, it was his dad was shop teacher, and Glenn Whitaker was the principal, and I had them both down as my references. Well, the guy that was doing the hiring, Bob Butts, was in Kiwanis with those two guys. I couldn't lose.
So you got the job. And where was Tri-County's offices then? Is it where it is now in Mansfield?
Right there in Mansfield.
I didn't realize that building had been around for that long.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was pretty near new when I got there.
Yeah.
Because before that, it was real old to start with, a real old building. Come clear out to the road.
And what did you do with Tri-County? Were you doing accounting with them?
Right. I ran the financial end of Tri-County for 19 years.
Wow.
I was involved in buying Wellsboro Electric and another one down in Lewisburg.
Yep.
Just before I retired. When I'd go to a meeting someplace, you'd have to introduce yourself, and I'd always say, I'm Roger Chilson, office manager from Tri-County Rural Electric, and I work for 12 women. And I always got a positive laugh back from any lady that was there.
How'd the office end up being so many women? I mean, that's great.
Well, because you got billing and meter reading and all that, processing the paperwork.
So it just ended up, women enjoyed that job, I guess, for whatever reason.
You're right.
Jobs were a lot more separated between men and women back when you were younger. I'm assuming you kind of, I don't want to say stereotypes, but nowadays jobs are open for whoever wants the job
more so. It's a different world.
Yeah. What are some of the other things when you say it's a different world? What comes to mind as being different? We could take the whole day to talk about it, but what are a couple of things that would surprise somebody?
Did you realize we had a milk plant in Mansfield?
No, I know where the one was in Liberty, but I don't. And
okay, you know where CVS is?
Yes.
Okay, if you look to the right of CVS, you'll see a ledge out around there. Out in back of there is where the milk plant was. Dairyman's League.
There's still some old remnants of something back there,
Right.
bricks and things that...
Then the other one was, where Quickfill's at.
Yep.
Okay, Rankin's was there. And when I was working on the farm, we'd take milk in the cans down, put it to there. They would take and dump it into tractor trailers and haul it into other plants.
Huh. And that Mansfield Novelty Company, that was around when you were there?
That's where Arnott Building.
Supplies. I know nothing about it other than that's where Arnott Building Supply was, and it was a big deal in the time.
Yeah, it was. All the wood products and that was right there at the Novelty Works.
They made hundreds of thousands of rulers there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a change over life, but then everything has a life.
Yep. Well, how busy do you remember Mansfield as a kid? Going into town to Mansfield, I'm being told like Saturday was usually the busy day or Friday evening to go to town.
I didn't go to town very often. I got up in the morning, you went to work for somebody to make $1, and my dad was sick for one whole summer, and I went to work $5 a day and brought every dime home, give it to him.
People looked out for family then.
Oh, yes.
Yep. I mean, people do now, but they did it at a different level. Everybody did then, I think, more.
Yeah.
Any other memories that you want to share before we wrap up?
Oh, yeah. You see farmers putting up hay now, right?
Sure.
I can remember back when you did it with horses. And
must have been a lot more work.
Oh, it was, and it was put in loose and then hauled up and put into the barn and then fed out. Or if you had more hay than what you cows enough to eat it, well, then that's when your Chet Case would be baling it to send into New York City.
You see the old pictures and you hear the term a needle in a haystack, and people are like, well, what's a haystack? But a haystack was the big pile of hay not baled, right? I
That's
assume.
right.
And it always looked like something that'd be really fun to jump right into as a kid, but I'm guessing there was itchies to be had if you did. But just,
no,
you done it.
Well, you played in the hay. It
no problem.
No,
just seemed like it would be. Every time as a kid I saw those pictures, I thought, boy, that must have been so much fun just jumping into that big airbag of hay.
Yeah.
So tell me about what KFC, or what was there before KFC, because that's not historical.
Yeah, there was Raiden Canoe Camp, and there was Blue Sunoco Station right there, and then the next building where KFC was a barn full of milk cows that Bill Insco was the one that owned them. And all those businesses from there up to Eddie's Truck Stop are fields that was a farm at one time.
Where Walmart is now, that section is Canoe Camp, but before all that stuff was there, it had its own identity. I hope those pictures that were in Grandma's kitchen are preserved somewhere, because they're really neat seeing the old pictures. The church is sort of the center of town, and really the church is the only thing that's left, I think, symbolically of what was there, and maybe the VFW building would have been there then, but...
Don't know.
Well, Roger, I appreciate you joining us today on Saturday with Seniors. It's been very interesting learning from you and what life was like here, and everyone's got their own story, and yours is very interesting. Thank you for all your years of service, and boy, you've circled the world, and you're still working, right? I see computers behind you. I'm sitting in your office. I assume you still do. How many years have you been doing taxes now here?
Oh, better than 30 years, and I'm getting to the point to where I need to slow down. I'm still doing about 235 of them.
You've been doing taxes for that. It's gotten more complicated. Is it just my imagination, or is it tougher to prepare taxes? The IRS make it? No, they don't make it tougher every year?
Well, as long as you have computers where you can buy programs like Pro Series is what I use.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of plugging stuff in, knowing where to put it, and then print it out.
A lot of people your age are afraid of computers.
Oh, I know.
And you're not. And really, I think the fear, it's kind of a shame, because if somebody, especially if they're shut-in, the communication that you can have and keeping in touch with your grandkids and everything with the computer is just, they're missing out on a lot.
Yes. Well, when I went to Tri-County back in 1980, they didn't have any computers. They were still using IBM cards. And
the old punch cards.
And I said to my boss, we need more computers. He says, well, I told that last guy for the last 3 years we needed a computerization, and he never got at it and did it. Well, I sure did.
That was quite a tale to be saying 42 years ago we need to computerize in 1980. So
right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Roger Chilson joining us from Covington, 84 years old, our guest today on Saturday with Seniors. If you missed any of today's show, go to our website. You'll find a link to our YouTube channel. Our website's kc101fm.com. You can hear all the previous episodes, including this one, of Saturday with Seniors here on KC101. It's all been brought to you by the local branches of FCCB Bank, which are in Wellsboro, Mansfield, and Blossburg. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.